Why was Jeff Hardy suspended so many times in his career or even getting fired? How could he defy death so many times? With his brother Matt, what were the moments when they hit rock bottom the most? And where do these self-destructive behaviors they have had for long years really come from? It is a pleasure to meet you on the Wrestling Paradise for this documentary on the Hardy Brothers' demons, where we will answer all these fascinating questions as best we can. You will learn, among other things, how Matt left thousands of fans believing he was committing suicide, how Jeff was arrested in a traumatic scene, but also how the latter has already arrived to the ring for an important match completely high, why the charismatic Enigma was suspended so much, and even how they both almost died while driving drunk. And you will never guess what thing the Big Show has already witnessed. You are on the Wrestling Paradise, the Hardy Brothers' demons, between recurring nightmare and fragile light. Let's go. It was at their home in North Carolina that it all started, and you will see that's where we find the origins of their future problems at the end of the video. They put a trampoline in the garden to be able to wrestle. From there, they worked hard without ever looking back. At the very beginning of their career, the Hardy Brothers could drive up to 13 hours for only $20. They had a big dream: become WWE superstars, the world's biggest wrestling federation. They certainly did not suspect it, but this pursuit of happiness will lead them to the gates of death. Jeff and Matt grew up in the countryside. It's hard to imagine it today, but they were kids playing in the woods. There was not much money in their family. They lived in very simple material conditions. On the other hand, they had all the space they wanted. So they were forced to use their imagination a lot, and you will see this creativity in their wrestling career. At a very young age, they are already imitating sports entertainment's big stars, such as Hulk Hogan, for example.
What are you gonna do when 10,000 watts flow? Can you survive? I don't think so!
They were fans of this discipline. For them, the wrestlers were superheroes. It all started with a ring in their garden, but still with a small difference compared to a real ring. The mat was a trampoline, not very hard wooden boards, and precisely they created their little company called the Trampoline Wrestling Federation, the TWF. They even did shows in their area. They quickly become addicted to this universe, a very healthy addiction compared to those they will have in a few years, as you will see. All this enabled them to already work in the WWE at a very young age. While the famous Attitude Era is starting soon with its millions of viewers, they are used to put important superstars over to work when the Federation lacks wrestlers. We will see the two brothers alongside Michael Hayes, who will take them under his wing. From that time on, they became one of the fans' favorite tag teams. They are young, they are crazy, they take incredible risks, they have unusual looks, they are cool. They presented themselves as being extreme. Did they ever suspect the problems that this identity would cause? In any case, the young fans adored them. They make signs in their honor, they dress like them. Together, they are also writing history since they were part of the first WWE Tag Team Ladder match of all time in 1999. With also the Canadians Edge and Christian, whom they will often meet again in the following years, they even had a standing ovation at Monday Night Raw.
People gave the four of us a standing ovation.
Can we say they sacrificed their bodies to impress the crowd? But wasn't it too much? We see Jeff Hardy do many swanton bombs, being several feet above the ground. You must not forget that the slightest fall in wrestling is painful. So can you imagine doing extreme falls and on a very regular basis? You may have already seen images of their famous match at WrestleMania 17 in 2001 with this legendary moment. Do you realize the repercussions of a fall like this for Jeff? They have gone beyond their physical and mental limits and will eventually pay the price. The years go by, the dangerous stunts continue, but Matt and Jeff's bodies are suffering the consequences. They are addicted to these sensations when they do mind-blowing moves. But in your opinion, how did they manage this pain that was becoming more and more important over the years? You probably understood it. They turned to all kinds of products. And as you can imagine, the WWE doesn't allow all these substances. That's why there will be departures, suspensions. Jeff got fired in April 2003 because he was in the middle of a burnout. He was erratic, took drugs, and didn't want to go to rehab. He was suspended in 2007 and then in 2008. The fact is that between the already very physical side of wrestling and their overloaded schedule, the two brothers feel more and more lost. In 2009, Jeff Hardy was one of the most popular superstars, but at that time his state was very bad. On trips from city to city, he is in physical pain. With Matt, they feel the need to take painkillers, muscle relaxers to be able to stay at their usual performance level. The more they were in pain, the more they abused all these products. On August 28th, after a very real rivalry with CM Punk, Jeff left the Stamford Federation. Without his brother, Matt felt alone in the company. He was exhausted physically and mentally after all these years. He had several injuries at the same time. All this will lead Matt to addiction. When his friends asked him if he had consumed anything, he said no, but he was lying. His friends took that badly. He closed in on himself. He clearly felt out of place there.
Do I think WWE is the place for me to be right now? Honestly, I don't think it is.
While filming, Matt was falling asleep in front of the camera. His colleague, Big Show, says that he already saw him with his head in a plate full of food. Other people had witnessed this scene, which was the result of some somas and painkillers. His colleagues warned him that he had to take control of himself. Otherwise, he was running towards a certain death. For his employer, it was going to end up being too much. In October 2010, Matt Hardy was fired. At that time, the long descent into hell of the Hardy brothers began. Be prepared to be shocked, because their addictions have really taken them very far. Jeff will get arrested only 2 weeks after his story with the WWE ended. In his home, we will find 555 milliliters of anabolic steroids, 262 pills of Vicodin, powdered cocaine, 180 somas. He will be charged with drug trafficking and possession of steroids, which is of course illegal. A fan allegedly had drugs delivered to him. In total, the value of everything he had at his home was $2,500.
I was getting pills illegally.
When he was arrested, he was with his wife. They had to get on the ground, face down, handcuffed. Jeff describes this scene as the worst experience of his entire life. He felt like he was in a nightmare, as if it wasn't real. He says he thought his life was over. He believed that he would go to prison for 50 years. While he was still dealing with a lot of problems, he signed with the TNA Federation in January 2010. Returning to work did him good. Wrestling helped him in this dark period of his life, but in the end, there will not be the success that he hoped for. According to AJ Styles, the future WWE wrestler who worked there at the same time, Jeff still had too many issues. When they needed him, he was nowhere to be found. He was hiding in places where no one could find him. There were even interns at TNA whose mission was to find the Hardy brothers. They sent them looking for them 1 hour before they really needed them because it was complicated. For their colleagues and the company managers, you can imagine that it was infernal. Jeff admits that he was selfish at that time. He recognizes that he told himself this company needed him, so he could do anything he wanted. In reality, Jeff and Matt were harmful to each other. Together, they often decided to forget their worries of the day by drinking, taking drugs. It is during this period that Jeff will do something that he will be very ashamed of afterwards.
CM Punk, your way's not the right way, brother.
And Matt was leading by example, in a way.
Please don't. Ah! Matt! Get out of—
They were both doing really bad. One night, while having dinner with his wrestling friend Shane Helms, Matt got high, which Shane didn't understand. There were only the two of them, there wasn't any party. Later, Jeff's brother will explain that he was trapped in a vicious circle. He had been taking pills for so long that he had to take them to feel a certain way. Without them, he felt very, very bad. His organism had become totally dependent on these products. Team Extreme no longer just went further and further into the ring to do risky moves. Behind the scenes, they were going more and more into excess and self-destruction. The culmination of this dangerous lifestyle will be the incident that took place on March 13, 2011. At the Victory Road show, Jeff Hardy faced the legend Sting. It is one of the most important events of the Federation. Sting was looking forward to having a great match with Jeff, but that day it was once again hard to find the charismatic Enigma. When the Icon finally discovered him, he immediately saw that Jeff wasn't here mentally, completely turned off. A little later they play his entrance music, but he's not there. After a few moments, he arrives for his entrance with people who are forced to help him to walk. Hardy goes to the arena anyway. For Eric Bischoff, one of the officials, it was obvious that it wasn't going to work. In his mind, the moment he came to the ring, it was very clear. He then explained to the two wrestlers what was going to follow. Instead of having a real match, Sting would very quickly do his finisher on Jeff to send him back to the locker room. He found himself facing one of his greatest idols, but he wasn't even in state to perform. Sting was very disappointed. The fans were angry, so was AJ Styles. The Phenomenal One gave everything he got for this federation, and Jeff came to destroy everything. He needed help. The whole world had been able to realize it. TNA was sending him home. Hardy says that for him, that night was a wake-up call. In 2018, he was saying that his whole dark, self-destructive part of him died that night. When he looks back at images of that evening in 2011, it makes him sick today. It was his rock bottom, and he couldn't go on like this anymore. At the same time, Matt Hardy was also experiencing his worst hours. He was posting a video on YouTube that looked like a suicide note.
Matt, you need to take that down.
His relatives say that he liked the controversy at that time. He wanted to shock the fans to get some attention. When they told him that he had to stop his nonsense, he replied by talking about the number of retweets he had. In videos, he was seen driving too fast in a car, eating grapes in a very strange way. At that time, he was no longer very close to his brother Jeff. His troubles had won inside of him. Matt's wife, Rebe, was sincerely afraid that he would die. It was too much, and he had to take control of himself. But that would be hell too. In his withdrawal, where he no longer touched any substance, he could not sleep. One of his friends offered him some products to get to sleep, but it was even worse. On August 19, 2011, Matt had a car accident hitting a tree. He will get arrested for drunk driving. It was too much for TNA, which fired him on August 20, 2011. The company had asked the two Hardy brothers to go to rehab, but neither had gone. A few days later, Matt collapsed at his home and was taken to the emergency room. On September 12th, he was arrested again for drunk driving. He himself says that he was a mess. It was his wife who called the police saying that she was worried about him, that he was high on pills and that he needed help. She showed the police a secret place in which Matt put all his painkillers. They also found ecstasy and steroids. She tells that she did this in despair as a last attempt to save him. He was going to be forced to change. In November, Matt was finally going to rehab, but there he was failing a sobriety test. While he was suspected of having taken alcohol, he said it was because of the mouthwash he just did. He will admit that at the rehab center, he had spoken to someone who had a bottle of whiskey hidden in his stuff. For your information, imagine that there was even $1 million bond to get him out of jail. He needed people to monitor him and keep him under control 24/7, otherwise he wouldn't make it. He was going back to rehab.
As my motto's always said, I will not die, and neither will my spirit.
It was very hard for him, but he was full of goodwill. For Jeff Hardy, it was during this period that he was serving his 10-day prison sentence. It was part of the sanctions after his arrest in September 2009, in addition to 30 months of probation and a $100,000 fine. Can you only imagine that he spent 10 days all alone in a cell at that time? He thought he was going crazy. He was only allowed 1 hour outside his cell in a day. 23 hours out of 24 he was locked up in a small room all by himself. He had a pencil and a paper. He kept a diary there. There he wrote a memorable phrase, "Hold on tight. Sometimes you have to disconnect to survive." He felt every second pass there, which seemed like an eternity. More than ever, he was facing himself. At the end of 2011, Matt Hardy was coming out of rehab. He seemed to be doing much better, full of good intentions. Another element has mattered a lot in his change: the fact of becoming a father. As he himself says,
"There's something in this life that's more important than me."
He says that he would not have made it without his wife. He needed someone to keep an eye on him all the time, and that's what she did. In October 2013, they got married. His wife describes him as a good husband, a good father. In his life, Matt had something more important than himself he had to improve. Becoming a father also helped his brother Jeff to get back on the right path. In 2018, he said he never wanted his daughters to see him in such a bad state. One of his daughters is named Ruby, in tribute to his mother. In 1987, when Jeff and Matt were only 10 and 13 years old respectively, an event profoundly impacted their fate: the death of their mother. So they grew up and faced the first trials of life without maternal presence. Jeff tells that he regularly goes to her grave. He talks to her and feels very connected to her at these moments. Matt says she had a very important influence on them. She didn't smoke, she didn't drink, she was never vulgar. In a way, she was a role model who kept them on the right path. It was only at the age of 25 that Matt drank his first beer, for example. Jeff says that she would have been very worried about their condition and that he felt her help to get out of it. They think their mother is watching over them. Now the Hardy brothers were facing a new challenge. Were they able not to relapse when they returned to the wrestling world? Would they eventually burn out mentally and physically again? Precisely these questions were the origin of the creation of a new character: Broken Matt Hardy. With a blonde part in his hair, he was a supernatural version of himself, whom the sufferings had rendered obsolete. It would lead to a match of breathtaking creativity: the final deletion in July 2016. Broken Matt Hardy against Brother Nero, the name of Jeff Hardy. They imagined all kinds of situations that we had never seen before in wrestling. To shoot all this in 16 hours, they had 2 cameramen for a whole night. Many fans were impressed by this match, which was buzzing on social media. Subsequently, they will manage to create a fantastic universe that will captivate fans. We can say that after some dark years, they completely reinvented themselves there. In a way, they were going back to their basics because when they were children, they also had fun filming themselves in adventures of all kinds. This big transformation will enable them to return on the WWE radar, which will lead to one of the most incredible scenes of 2017. You will see. We're at WrestleMania 33. In the most important show of the year, fans expect to see a fairly ordinary tag team ladder match between Cesaro and Sheamus, Big Cass and Enzo Amore, and Anderson and Gallows. But here we have a big twist. The New Day team, the hosts of the event, announced that another unscheduled team is participating in this confrontation, and then the reaction of the crowd is nuts, the moment is magical. After all these years, the Hardy brothers are back in the Stamford company to everyone's surprise. They even made up lies so that no one expected to see them show up at the grandest stage of them all. As soon as they returned, they became tag team champions. It was glory for Jeff and Matt as a symbol of their redemption. At that moment, we could say to ourselves, are the Hardy boys really cured of their demons? Will they manage to stay in the Federation for several years with their extreme style and without the slightest problem? It would be incorrect to answer yes to this question. This return in 2017 was beautiful, like a fairy tale. But you will see that all the following years are not so idyllic, even if we all would have liked them to be. Here are the facts, and they aren't wonderful. After several long absences due to injuries, Jeff will be arrested for drunk driving in 2018 and in 2019, a year when he was also arrested for being drunk in public. In December 2021, Jeff left in the middle of a match in a non-televised show. Moreover, the backstage stories around this WWE departure following this incident at the end of 2021 are quite strange. It's a real shame because, according to rumors, Jeff was supposed to face Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble a few weeks later. It is also a match that the charismatic Enigma dreamed of, since he had never yet crossed paths with the tribal chief. He had even said in an interview that he would very much like to be the one who takes the Universal title from Roman at that time. But what happened? Did he sabotage himself just as this potential dream match was getting closer? Nevertheless, a few weeks before this dismissal, he declared that he had experienced a lot of things and had become a better person. He was also very enthusiastic about the idea of having a new mask created and perhaps embodying his Willow character in the Stamford Federation. It's something he's never done before and which could have been exciting. Can you only imagine that Willow is Jeff Hardy's demon, as he himself said? It would have been very interesting to see him explore this part of him by taking inspiration from his past. He also advised young wrestlers to avoid drugs and alcohol as much as possible because they can ruin your life and kill you. He considered himself lucky to have gotten out of all this. Has he relapsed? Has there been a big misunderstanding? How could things have gone wrong while he seemed to be promised to go into the Hall of Fame? According to some media reports, Hardy's strange behavior in a non-televised show had led the officials to ask him to go to rehab, which he refused. So he would have been fired for this, while Matt claimed that Jeff was clean, that the test he had taken was negative, and that the company even offered him a spot in the Hall of Fame to make up for their mistake. After signing to All Elite Wrestling, where he reunited with Matt, he will end up being suspended there after getting arrested for drunk driving. A few months later, his brother will say that he has worked on himself like never before. On multiple occasions, Jeff has put his life and the lives of others at risk. He can consider himself happy that his drunken behavior did not cause any victims. In 2024, Matt presented us with a situation where Jeff had solved all his problems, where he did cardio every day at 5 in the morning. He considered that they were ready to kick some butt together. However, some fans thought that they were just shadows of themselves, no longer able to move as before. Some even considered that Jeff Hardy was not trustworthy to receive a really important push in wrestling. Anyway, during the summer of 2024, he seemed ready to start from scratch once again. For the record, he also took a lot of ice baths, which did him good. So here we are wondering, is Jeff Hardy doomed to eternally fight against a negativity that sometimes comes to haunt him? Is he in an eternal loop of recovery and then relapses? Were his promises and his big announcements about himself over the years real, or were they communication stunts? Is Matt Hardy healed and definitely a new man? As Jeff's older brother says, no human being is perfect. We all make mistakes, and it's never too late to take control of ourselves, and maybe Jeff Hardy's example shows us that a story is never really finished. The process never stops, and perhaps we have here the greatest lesson of the Team Extreme. Even when we lose and fall off the ladder, we must constantly get back up and start again in a better way.
Move forward and live this life because you only get one.
And this is how our documentary about the Hardy brothers' demons and their eventful struggle to change ends. We could see they had to fight against different addictions throughout their lives. Obviously, we realize that it is their sometimes suicidal wrestling style that led them to sufferings that were hard to bear without any substance. We also wonder if they can really perform in this way without ever needing any product. However, looking closer, we could also see that the final boss of their problems may have been in their childhood, with a tragedy in the middle of their adolescence. In any case, I have a debate for you. In your opinion, should the Hardy brothers return to the Stamford Federation in 2017 be considered a success or a disappointment? Come and give your opinion in the comments. I wonder what you think about it, and it will be interesting to discuss it together. We can say that the Hardys' journey raises a lot of questions, that's for sure. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay on the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?